Hello and welcome to the Memory Capsule podcast. Kind of. We're doing a little round table today with some prominent players and members in the community to talk about what is going on with our current tournament formats and what can be improved, what has been done in the past, what could be done in the future. My name is Rafal Gladys, and I'm joined by a plethora of talented players. Why don't we just introduce ourselves? Let's just start with Kieran, Mo, then Kyle. Just tell us who you are and what you're all about.
Sweet. Yeah, my name's Kieran Farah. I'm from Toronto. I've been playing Pokemon a really long time, since 2011. Pretty much played nonstop except for like maybe 3 or 4 years in the middle there. Yeah, just love competing and all things Pokemon. So happy to talk today.
My name is Mo. I've been playing Well, I'm from Chicago, Atlanta area, so not Chicago, but that's what I tell people when I travel because it's easier than saying Orland Park. And I've been playing since 2018 New Year's Day. That was my first League Cup. I played Willard without beaches. I like playing decks that are fun and enjoyable for me. Whether my opponent likes it or not, it's not up to me. That's up to them. I don't know. I just like playing Pokemon and being a part of the community. That's really all I care about. I don't really care how I do in tournaments.
I'm Kyle. I'm a pretty competitive Pokemon player when I want to be. I started playing competitively on the scene in 2005. Had a pretty good run for a while, and in 2016 switched over to commentary. So I've been doing that for what's going on my 9th year, and I like winning, and I like calling out good plays.
Yeah, and I've been playing since 2011, so we just have a whole range of experience here. Everyone's kind of played different tournament formats, might have very different perspectives based on what they've played. I want to just start by kind of like an airing of grievances. I'm just gonna give everyone 1 minute. What is kind of the main problem that you have been seeing or thing you'd want to see get fixed with the current tournament format as we've seen it so far this season? Um, Kyle, I heard you've been on Hexter Radio talking about some stuff a few days ago. Do you want to get us started?
All right, well, I'll just use my minute to go over a couple things. First, 50 minutes is not enough time to play 3 games. It's absurd to think that we can do that regardless of what the format is, honestly, because players can manipulate that time and end up giving you a lot of non-games, which just feels like you're not playing Pokemon to like actually play the game. You're playing this tournament structure trying to win a tournament, and it's a different competitive aspect, and it just doesn't feel like genuine Pokemon a lot of the times, which is really frustrating. And then we went into this new structure to try to give players an opportunity to potentially see like a better way to find a way to the top, and all we did was remove games and have the tournament end faster, and it doesn't help anyone. Time.
All right, there we go. Kieran.
Yeah, I have a couple. I'd actually say my number one thing is like the lack of like fast experimentation. Like we've had best of 350 for like pretty much a decade. They've tried this new system, which is cool. But I would really love to see Pokemon just experiment more and try different things at different regionals, different like maybe use SPEs to test a little bit more. Similar to Kyle, I think 50 minutes best of 3 is just so outdated. So for example, like I'd be fine if we tried like a best of 2 regionals and see if players like it or not. I'd be fine trying like less rounds, 60 minutes, trying more rounds, best of 1. To me, just like trying stuff and just seeing what works and what doesn't is better. But I think they're just kind of like resistant to change. And I guess my other big thing that I think is an issue, I think prizing, like not paying out past like top 32, like the cash, I think is a big issue. And other thing I have is like the balancing of the size of the tournaments. I think it's ridiculous that like we'll have like SPEs with like 100 people pay out the same as like 2,000 people tournaments. Same with regionals, like Vancouver will always be like half the size of like Baltimore, for example. So just I guess like imbalances that like kind of hurt, I guess, competitive integrity, or kind of some grievances I have. I don't think that's like as big of an issue as some of the other stuff we're going to discuss. So,
Right. And Mo, what have you been kind of seeing so far?
I will say the same thing like Kyle said, and the same thing that Kieran said. So it's tournament structure involving prizing. I hate checking your prize cards when all you just see this on a stream, like, watching literally any regional stream, their first deck search, they're looking through, they're organizing, all their trainers, Pokemon energies, and it's like 2 to 3 minutes, and I'm just like, dude, just flip your prize cards over, shuffle them, like, I wish every person at the start of the game would have a Hisuian heavy ball. I don't know who the first person was to mention it, but like it shaves off like 4 minutes because then you have to correctly shuffle your deck since it's in order. So you're taking like 10 extra overhand shuffles than the normal shuffle, and like I I hate it because every time I verse certain players who they're great players, I get it that you can sort your deck, congratulations, but like you're taking away like 5 minutes in a top eight, and then that's 15 minutes over the course of 3 games. Like it's just so that's my biggest pet peeve, and I wish it's like such an easy fix that they just let everyone like a swing heavy ball at the start of the game and shuffle them up, have your opponent shuffle it, and put it back down. Like write them down. Who cares? Take notes. But like, oh my gosh, it's just such a big time waster that you could literally just avoid.
Skill diff Mo.
Interesting. That's not what I was expecting,
Or
but that's
just don't
definitely
check
something
your
we can get
prizes.
to.
Just don't check your prizes.
Yeah.
So
check for the 2 cards. Don't check for your 4th research. Who cares?
Yeah, some people go too far and like check like every single card. Like, bro, like I don't check every single card on the first search. You do need to check eventually. Like, I'm like, did I prize a research? Did I prize a boss? Because if you go to take like 2 prizes, for example, like you want to like gamble and see like, yeah, I have a higher chance of hitting this. But yeah, I think we've gotten like too loose with like how long you're allowed to prize check. I think it's just become like an unwritten rule that you can do it, and like judges like are just saying like, all right, just take as long as you want. So yeah, I think that's a big problem.
So
yeah, it's so bad.
So one thing I do want to ask to kind of get us going is kind of choosing one of the topics being like kind of like the rounds and the round structure of the tournaments this season, which with how it was changed in Worlds and now moving forward this season. Kieran, you mentioned on your podcast a couple days ago that you were kind of doing Pokemon full time now, right? So I kind of want to pose this specifically for you. Seeing at Louisville people going into day 2 with 2 losses and being not able to make day 2 or top 8, you as someone who is now like Pokemon's like your thing, how does that kind of make you feel knowing that there is a possibility with the tournament format and rounds and things that you, who is now a full-time Pokemon player, can make day 2 and have no chance of winning? How does that kind of make you feel after seeing that whole scenario happen?
All right, my like hot take is I think that part of the argument I think is like I think it's a little overblown. So I think we just like have to accept, right, that like top 8, like you have to be one of the 8 best players to make top cut now. That's always how it's been. So I guess now it's just like if you go 6-2, like you got eliminated during day 1 from cut. You're just playing now for like prize money and all that. What feels bad is I think the way Pokemon intended for the system to work and how it's always worked is that if you make day 2, you have a chance to make top cut. And I will say, like, it was a huge anomaly that like we didn't like get asymmetrical cut, right? Because it's like we barely missed the 9th round. We like had a bunch of ties in the penultimate round and like no ties in like the last round. So I think it was a rare occurrence. I think it does feel bad for like the overall player experience, and I think going forward now people are just gonna be worried about that. And then like I think we had this whole other thing where like people are like, oh, you have to gentleman's agreement every round now because ties got devalued. But now people are gonna be like, oh, I have to start tying again because I need to go X1-1 now to make cut. So like I don't think it like feels like bad for me going into like day 2 at X2 really. It just depends on like the tournament. And I think going forward now, like people will have a rough idea if like this is gonna be an issue or not. So to me, like I don't understand why the trigger for 9 rounds is just lower, like players. Like I understand why we cut rounds from day 2 because they have to like make up time to do the asymmetrical cut. But like we're not doing that day 1. So like why can't we just have 9 rounds at like every tournament and then just change the point kicker to make day 2 depending on how many people we have? To me, that's what just doesn't make sense to me, and that's what feels bad. So
Yeah, Kyle, like as a caster, like how has that experience kind of been like with the less rounds day 2? And again, Louisville's such an anomaly, but I think the reason we're kind of talking about it is like it's an anomaly until there's 2 or 3 events with 1950 players and things are getting kind of funky and people are getting cut off at weird points. And how does that kind of feel on your end where you're really only casting the last round or 2 of day 2 and it's a little tougher to kind of put together like a narrative going in the top 8 and then we don't even have a top 16 round?
Yep, it's not like ICs where we're gonna come up with the budget to cast every single round. It just isn't happening at regionals level, and we've come to terms with that. But when we develop the schedule and for the day, and we see 2,200 estimated players, we're gonna have these numbers to be able to get there, and then 300 people don't show up because of everything else that's been going around in North America. There were a bunch of storms and other issues. So, like, I get it. Like, a lot of people couldn't attend. This was pretty fluky to go under 2,000 at a Midwest event, but it led to us having 8 rounds. And then that means we casted 5 matches on day 1, and then with no asymmetrical cut, we casted 5 matches in day 2. Like, that's ridiculous that we didn't get to feature more Pokemon. We barely got to discuss anything going into the tournament, and I casted 2 matches on day 1. Like, I didn't do anything. Let me earn my check.
Yeah, and then this is then like for Mo and Kieran. You know, Mo, you haven't like played at a regional, but you attended Louisville, and Kieran, you've attended both NA regionals. How has that experience in general been of the less rounds? What's been kind of your reaction to the way it's been structured now?
Mo, you want to go first?
Sure. I think as someone that watched the games, so I was just spectating, and I think that when watching the stream, like Kyle said, we're missing out on that 9th round, and you're just like, okay, isn't there normally 9 rounds for a Midwest event? Like, it's supposed to have the numbers for it. Um, and you just wonder where, like, all the time's going, or like, isn't this player supposed to make top cut now? He went undefeated in day 2. It's just like a little bit of a shaker. But to be fair, this event did have like 300 less people show up, like Kyle said. So it's not going to happen every tournament. But like if we're going to have like Milwaukee and we have, 8 rounds and then 4 rounds day 2, I'm like, okay, something's happening, that something has to change. But I guarantee like almost every other tournament this year, besides like the West Coast ones, will have like a solidified asymmetrical cut. And this might be like the only time that actually happens, and knock on wood, that we're like people are not missing out on that, or like you're not missing out on the narrative while watching the stream or like seeing how the tournaments run. Um, I mean, going forward, we're just gonna have to see what happens with Gaming Gen, how they run their events, how fast we go through the tournament. I was talking to Mike Pramlott, who was the head judge for seniors, I believe, or juniors, but he was the head judge for one of the younger divisions, and he said he was done like that because for every decision, he was just letting them know, like, okay, this is how I'm going to execute that ruling. But I mean, it's just, it's everything combined. We're going to see how it ends up, whether it's going to be the judging, the TO, the attendance. I feel like Louisville is still gaming gen getting in their groove, as well as we had 300 people not show up. So it's a mixture of all of that accumulating.
Yeah, I think just like the actual like experience. Like I think playing less Pokemon obviously sucks for everyone. I think the worst thing for the experience this year is like you literally sit down like half your opponents before you even like play a card are like, oh, like do you want a gentleman's? Like all this stuff. Like there's all this pressure, right? And like in a perfect world, like everyone just gentlemen's fairlies, but then that introduces like new stuff. Like you have to like trust your opponent who you don't know. Like you're not really like playing Pokemon. Like you're agreeing on prize cards. You're agreeing on board state. Like it kind of hurts the integrity of the tournament, in my opinion, when like people are like circumventing like what is supposed to happen, like ties, right? So I just think this year it feels worse to play because there's more pressure to do that, just because like a tie is effectively a loss with this like new system Pokemon picked. So that's what feels bad to me, and I think I'm obviously an experienced player, like I know how to navigate that. But like imagine if it's your first regionals and like someone asks you to do that, like you feel pressured to do it, like you don't fully understand it. And like as a community collectively, we've all agreed that this is like the optimal thing to do if you're trying to win the tournament. So to me, that's the biggest detractor to the experience this year. It's just like how much ties have been devalued, and like how the like I think the uptick in gentlemen's. Like I personally just hate doing gentlemen's because like I just don't like trusting that my opponent's going to be like understand like a board state as well as I do, or that my opponent might back out on it because I've had that happen before. Um, so yeah, that to me is like the biggest detriment I think to the current system that I haven't liked this year.
So would you say it's more of like a round number issue or like a 50-minute round type issue?
Well, I'd say it's like both, right? Like the way they've done it now and the way asymmetrical cut is going to go is like in general, X2 is going to be the cutoff for like asymmetrical cut. So at that point, like a tie doesn't make sense unless you're going like XO like 3, right? So like if you tie, like let's say you already have a loss in the tournament, like if you tie, you're effectively losing. Like it doesn't do anything if your goal is to make top 8. Like I guess it helps you make like top 32 or maybe top 16. But most competitive players like myself, like I'm just trying to make top 8, right? Most players like are trying to make day 2. So to them, like they don't really care about ties. And I think we know like historically ties, like the tie rate of tournaments around like 15-16%, and we've seen it drop this year. And I'm 100% sure it is just because of how much more gentlemen's agreements are going on, right? So yeah, I think it's just like two things. It's just like the round number going down, and then the point cutoff threshold for day 2 it's an even number. It's not an odd number like before. So like that to me is like the biggest reason that's happening. It's just because of that. And I just think going back to like 9 rounds and then just like even if you want to make like 20 points to make day 2, so like 6-1-2 for example, I think that would like make people feel a lot better than what we're using right now. So
I will say, I think that like this feels like so I've only been to one world championship, the one in Yokohama, and my mindset going in was I'm gonna gentleman's agreement starting round 1 because I want to be able to make day 2 and like a tie sucks. Like if I tie, I'm gonna skip to my opponent. Whether they want to do it to me, who cares? Because I just want to make sure that one of us moves on. And even if it's the first tie of the day, because it's essentially a loss unless you go XO3 like Kieran said. Um, and going into Yokohama Worlds, like I played Gardevoir, a deck that might tie, but usually you're going to finish your games pretty convincingly. So I just went in with the mindset like I'm going to have the gentleman's agreement because I don't want to tie. I want to have content or be in contention to make day 2, and that's kind of how it feels because the day 1 structure now for regionals is an extension of or the day 2 structure is an extension of day 1. So in order to make top 8, you have to do this whole tournament instead of it kind of feeling like it resets because in the past one, like in the year of Yokohama Worlds, when I would go into day 2, I always went in at 6-2-1 just because like I would take a tie earlier in the day, but had I not done that, I would have had a gentleman's agreement those rounds, but I would go into day 2 saying, okay, if I go undefeated, I make top 8 regardless. Like there's no chance that I don't. But now it's like if you go into day 2, you took a tie, or like maybe you didn't get a gentleman's agreement going your way, whatever it is, but you have 2 less match points than a win. So now it just feels like ties are punishing, even though they shouldn't feel that way. But like, there's a lot of pressure going on people for tying now, and it feels like you're getting punished every time you tie.
So I think one of the things we definitely should move towards then, like with our conversation, is talking about like ties in general, like the concept of ties, the concept of 50-minute plus 3. Does it feel like the way to go, especially with how things are going with less rounds? And the thing I want to give us quickly is this thread that Kieran found, this old Pokegym thread for us old players. So maybe I guess not for Mo, but for me, Kyle, and
Woo,
Kieran.
youth.
Pokegym was a forum. This was before Facebook was the main Pokemon group, and then now Twitter is the main Pokemon page, for better or for worse. We have this old Pokegym thread from 2014 by Ness, which is Jason Klaczynski, 3-time world champion, called "Dear TPCI, scrap the disaster that is 50 plus 3." And he basically he talks about how bad it is. He talks about how we should submit some support tickets to Pokemon saying, please abandon 50 plus 3 and replace it with a system and time limit that rewards skill, encourages fair play, and is not stressful and exhausting on players and staff. So like this was around the time that I kind of stopped playing because I was going to college and there was no cards around then. Kyle, you were playing around then. Kieran, were you also playing around then?
I was
Do you guys remember this whole event of
Oh yeah.
moving from best of 1
Yeah.
events to moving to best of 3 events? What was it like then?
First off, if you want to hit me up at K Psycho on Pokegym,
Hey,
that's
psycho.
that was my horrible name I made up as a young boy to get. You would list all your accomplishments in your tag, and like
Yep.
you'd think you were so cool. Like, yeah, I got a state championship as a senior. Check me out. Anywho, yeah, it was really interesting when they presented this to us because initially everyone kind of was like, we didn't think about it like that deep. We were just like, ooh, more Pokemon. We'll see who the better player is. You give me a game where we don't have those non-games, those early donks, those other issues. This is gonna be fine. And then slowly but surely you realize like, oh, this can definitely be manipulated, and then we're not playing Pokemon anymore. So I think we all came to that conclusion that Jason did. It just took us a little longer to get there.
Yeah. I think like the reason we originally switched to best of 3 is the game kind of went around like 2012, 2013 really fast. Like there was a lot of decks that would like donk. So then they
Big
were like,
basics.
"Oh, yeah, like big basic decks, right?" So they're like, "Oh, like we need to mitigate this." So like, okay, like best of 3, if you get an unlucky game, like you can like recover. But I think a really underrated thing back then that made it so bad was the game was a lot slower than it is now. Like single prize decks like existed and they're plentiful. Like even the big basic decks, like they would 2-shot each other. They wouldn't like 1-shot each other like we have now. So the games were really long back then. Like I'd say the average game was probably around like 25 minutes or something, and like now it's maybe around like 20, maybe even less. So it just felt extra bad because it felt like almost impossible to play a full 3 games. And I think like the very first regionals that we had that system, I think the tie rate was like over 20%. And it also there wasn't like a point threshold to make day 2. It was just top 32 made day 2 because the terms were smaller back then. So people didn't really understand like the type of record you needed. People didn't understand gentlemen's or like if you had to concede or not. I think the other thing that changed when they did that, I guess we're not really discussing it right now, but it's like they went to like just making like top 8 as the cut. We used to actually do top cut with like be based on attendance. It's like U.S. Nationals used to have like top 128 top cut, which I don't think was good, but like that's just how it used to be, right? So it's like it was a couple changes at once. Because I think people were excited for best of 3 because I think as a community back then people were saying like that's more skill based, right? But then once they implement it, we were like, oh, like we didn't know that we had it like better before, type thing. So I think if they would have implemented it with more time, like even like today, right? Like I think everyone would love that. So.
Yeah, Mo, how kind of hearing this, like, what is your reaction as someone who's only played regionals and ICs that are best of 3, 50 minutes? Like, how would you feel about if you went to NAIC and it's like 10 rounds, best of ones, day 1?
I okay, so I hate League Cups. I don't hate League Cups. League Cups are cool. I hate League Challenges, and that's because I feel like you can never take a loss. In League Cups, playing best of 1 is kind of just like it has to be your day, but at a regional, like I haven't had the success that Kieran or Kyle have had, where I've never been top 8 at a regional. Yeah, top 16 baby. But that's all I've ever had. But in terms of like it being your weekend, it just has to if you're gonna win the tournament. You can't just have like an average day and be like, I'm just gonna casually make top 8 at a regional. I'm not Grant Shen booking a flight to OCIC just to make top 8. And so I think that like if you're gonna play a bunch of games of best of 1, at least you're playing a bunch of games. My thing is that I hate going to a League Cup where I play 3 rounds and then you see the table next to you, all of them are double IDing for the next 2 rounds. I think that's not good. I would get rid of IDs and I would get rid of ties, but getting rid of IDs would be like my first thing if we played a bunch of best of 1 games, because I hate that like people can manipulate like, okay, well, we're at this threshold, let's just go ahead and intentionally draw the match point, whatever. But like, I think that like if you play more games of Pokemon that are best of 1, that's cool. It takes away the variance of like I bricked 1 game, who cares? Go to the next one, get food. But I would like to see like top cut matches still be like 75 minutes, best of 3. But in Swiss, like if you're playing more Pokemon and it's best of 1, cool. By all means, do it. More rounds, it takes away from like the matchup variance where like you're not sitting through playing stall and you're up against a Lugia for 50 minutes and you have to try to grind it out. I'm fine with best of 1 as long as you're given the right amount of rounds, as well as I'd probably do like double game losses for ties and take away IDs because I think they're like terrible for the game in general.
So are you kind of thinking just like Japan's format with a little bit more time? Because they do 25 minutes. If you don't finish a game, you get a double loss. And I'll be honest, I don't know if they like that or how much they like that. Maybe you guys can speak a bit to like how Japanese players have reacted to playing like best of 3 at Worlds, how they feel about it compared to our format.
Well, the Japanese players
I
they always say they love playing best of 3. Like they hate their format a lot. So it's like it's interesting. Their tournaments are also way bigger than ours though. So it's like I think they have even more variance by playing best of 1.
I mean, they just Oh, sorry. I was gonna say like they just have to like fire off pods then. Like I think that's a huge thing too, because they're trying to like whack down like from 5,000 to 3,000 players that are still in contention to 2,500 players to 1,500. So like they just have too many people and they need to run pods and then have like, you know, the 16 people from each 4 pods play off and this bracket or whatever. But like I mean, best of 1 kind of sucks. Like, I don't like best of 1, but like if that's the option we have, I would probably do best of 1 with like maybe 30, 35 minutes and then take away ties in terms of like either go off prizes left or whatever it is, or you can't go off port state because that's, subjective, but like I would go off like prizes in best of 1 or like the double game loss, but it's just some way. It can't be perfect, but some way to make sure that the games finish and people are not getting scumbagged out of it because someone wins game 1 and then slow plays game 2 and it never finishes.
Kyle, what were you gonna say?
Just to build on what he's saying there, playing off prizes was like a main way to close out games way back when too. I can't remember if it was going on at the same time as when we switched to best of three, because plus 3 turns was also then added in, and that kind of threw a wrench into things. But I mean, playing to just get down to 4 prize cards remaining to win a game was like very easy to do in our way back then. And I feel like in these days, like it's a lot of just stalling, buying time, and then it's impossible to just get the 4 prize cards you would have needed. But that's also a way to try to close out on some of these tying issues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I used to like just the prizes as the tiebreaker. I think it was fair. Like the only issue you would have is like if you're people were playing against like a stall deck, like they would like stall because like if you can get it to time, you just win. You've taken 1 prize.
Yeah.
But other than that, it felt like a satisfying way to conclude most games.
But
Also,
stall still
isn't that
does
just
fine
like
in Japan with 25 minutes.
it's perfectly deserved to punish anyone playing stall. Like
Yes.
if they want to play stall, they've opened up the floodgates to that. They understand what they're walking into. We used to joke about anytime Sander made top 8, it's like, well, he had a good run because you're not gonna win in best of 3 right there, brother. Like it just doesn't happen.
The way for him to like, I mean, the way for stall decks to exist though, there is like I mean, we're getting counter cards reprinted, right? Like the counter gain, I think, is an insane card to see in the format because now you can do things like having a stall deck with attackers. Like Ursaluna is a really good card for stall because now you have your way to like, oh, my opponent took 2 prizes. Well, I'm gonna go like, or they took 3 prizes. I'm gonna go like double turbo, Hero's Cape, and Penny Loop with my Ursaluna, and like, um, so I mean, as long as they're printing like viable, they don't have to print like a full deck, but if they're printing like viable ways for stall and control decks to take prizes, then I think it shouldn't be an issue. Especially since they're printing these cards like Counter Gain and like Counter Catcher still in format. So like if you sign up to play stall like and you don't finish your game, okay, that's tough. You go off prizes, but like there's ways to implement that or to implement cards that discard cards, plays a Rosic or whatever. Like, I mean, you get what you sign up for, but also there, it's not like you don't get to choose just 60 cards you play to a tournament. You get to pick everything.
Do
Play
we
a
think
Radiant
that
Zard.
There's some strategies though for stall where it doesn't make sense to take prizes, right? Like I agree.
Yeah.
Maybe like you just have to play like some attacking option if you're gonna play a stall deck, I guess.
there's like that adding more time and just doing like 60 plus 3 is reasonable at all? Because people say that maybe it's just better to get more time, but then I'm thinking like the whole reason we cut around and then we just end up getting out the same time we'd get out before because of all that added time. I know like Louisville allowed us to get out pretty quick. We got out at like 7. It was kind of nice. But then Baltimore, we got out late. There was a lot of delays between rounds. And now I'm just imagining that with 1 hour rounds. So we're getting out at like 11 o'clock. Is that really like people? Because some people say we just need a bit more time. People should be able to finish 3 games. Like, would more time in the current system really do much?
I'd
Like if we're
rather
gonna go
get
ahead,
out at
Kyle.
12:30 every night and actually have the right people making day 2 and top cut. Like the fact that we're getting out at 7, I understand like that's important to some people, but like, if you're trying to win the event or like continue, like if you're trying to make a job out of this, you don't care when you get out. You're gonna grind. Like that's the whole point of playing in these events. So I felt like when they introduced this, it was like them trying step 1 of a 2-step plan where they cut time to see how much time they can add back into the game so that they could maybe try something like 60. But they also need to include a rule change to adjust for either the prize checking or mulligan or something in order to avoid the non-games or the ridiculous slow play that we see at the beginning of games.
Yeah, I mean, like if we have like 8 rounds now, you cut a round off, right? So like say, I think the average turnaround time is around like 80 minutes if you include the round itself. So it's like, why can't you just add those extra 80 minutes we're cutting with the 9th round? Just add 10 minutes if we're gonna play 8 rounds. That's basically the same amount of time as it was before, right? Like I was saying, like if we agree that prize checking, like if each player takes 2 minutes, right? Like that's 4 minutes a game. If you do that in 3 games, that's like over 20% of like the allotted time for a match. So I think just that rule change of like just look at your prizes, that actually like also is like the same thing as increasing like the time limit by like another 10 minutes, right? So like there's just all these like very obvious solutions that I don't think hurt the integrity of the game at all, right? It's like, and they just won't implement it. So I'm like, maybe they don't do the prize check thing because maybe the people in Japan have to agree on any rule changes to the game. But it's like, I don't know, like I don't know why they can't just experiment with some of this stuff. Like why not next regionals just be like, all right, like everyone look at your prize cards. They send email. I always get the email being like, oh, give your post event feedback. Like why aren't we just trying some of these things and just being like, all right, did you guys like that we did this or not?
Do you think Puka just doesn't want to write the extra paragraph into the rule book for all the theme decks?
He's working too hard, man. You
Yeah.
can't ask that of him.
I talked about this with Tord when we played a non-game at Peoria, and afterwards we just sat there and we're like, how do we fix this? This sucks. And we're like, maybe it's time to like adjust the mulligan system. Just something to where like you pick your opening Pokemon, or like some card starts in your hand or whatever. Like pick one card to start in your hand so that you just don't have a non-game. Just it wouldn't affect like if both players are popping off, you're gonna still have those opportunities for all the comeback mechanisms that they love in the game. But it's the non-games that are so dang boring. Like it's so annoying to watch some dude just miss buddy and then lose the game as the other guy's crushing his face in. Like let's give both players buddy in the opening hand or whatever they choose, and see what they wanted to do with their deck. And it'd be cool to see, oh, Bennett actually set up. Fine, cool.
Yeah, that's the worst part of like trading card games, I think. Like I was watching like the Lil stream today, like the win in game 3. Some guy went like hoot draw pass. I'm like, okay, well, like also as a viewer, right? Like if you're trying to be like an esport now or whatever they're trying to do, like it just looks bad. Like someone tunes in, they're like, hey, this guy just went draw a pass, like lose the game. Right? So it's like I do think
build a storyline with that caster. Yeah, like come on.
Yeah. I
so
mean,
he actually plays this rarity because
like other games have mulligan systems I think are fair. Like Magic, it's like you can just throw your hand back, you draw one less card. I think that would be a fair system in Pokemon. Like Hearthstone system is like you pick the cards you want to keep, you throw the rest out and replace them. That could be maybe a system. Or just maybe just the rules just you get one mulligan per match even maybe. Like I don't know, just anything to like decrease the number of non-games I think would be better. Because I think there's nothing worse than Pokemon than literally just looking and going like draw a pass.
What did
Like,
what did you all think about? I don't know if you all saw this, but I think it was Seagrove who came up with the initial one of draw 13 to start the game and pick your 6 prizes, and then you just eliminate the prizing map. Also, you just did them both at the same time.
That's actually an interesting idea. I like it. I feel like maybe people would have to adjust. They might take a little too long to pick their 6 prizes, but as long as like,
but also it's better than them taking 5 minutes to look through the deck. Like
to sort their deck.
I think it'd still go faster, but it would be an extra minute or so.
Yeah, I think anything that decreases variance and like just increases like the games being played in skill is just like better. The only thing I would say you have to be a little careful of is like cards like Klefki like might get a little too strong because like your odds of opening it are like almost doubled now. People at 4, so like maybe that has to be balanced somehow with the cards they design. But yeah, I think, or like maybe the ability is to start saying this doesn't work on the first turn or something. But like yeah, I think that's a good idea. Anything's better than what we have basically right now, and I wish they would just try it. So
I think that like this is like maybe an unpopular opinion, and it's kind of rude, but like I think something to also I'm not okay with 60 minutes if everyone's playing, but I think what they can do is like break the tournament in half. I don't know if Tom allows it. Maybe they'll have to use like some new structure, but like break the tournament off that like, okay, sorry, you're like not in the losers bracket. I don't want to say that, but like you're out of contention for day 2, but you can still play your rounds if you like to. But once you can't make day 2 based off like the standards with like X2 or whatever it is, because we're always reaching more than 32 players making day 2, that you're just put into like a separate tournament now. So then that way you're not holding it up, because like my one pet peeve is like, okay, we're waiting for table 1 to finish. That's fine. They're on stream. And then once they finish, the round's going to go up. Never mind. Joe Schmo on table 564 is actually playing out at 141. And like, we're waiting for these people that are like not in contention for day 2 to still finish. And like, that holds up the tournament in my opinion, because they always have like some random judge call too, and like there's like 3 or 4 tables that are out of contention for day 2 where like they could just like break it off into another tournament and like, whoa, what do you know, our tournament's running more efficiently. That's part of the problem in my opinion for like as the day goes on, because there's always those people that still show up to their rounds, which by all means you pay to play Pokemon, but they can, I don't know if the software allows for it, but like that's one of the things I notice, that like we're just waiting on this. It's the same at League Cup. It's the same at other tournaments. It's just when you're scaling it to a 2,000 player tournament, you notice it a lot more with these tables. Because at League Cups, like you're waiting for, the bottom tables to finish, and you're just like, okay, whatever. But like we're waiting for 10 people that are at table 500 plus and like that's
So-
one thing that I noticed. Like we could cut that out.
So
I didn't think
that
that Mo would
sorry.
be the elitist mindset of the four of us. That's
I'm at those tables.
wow,
Yeah, I was
I'm
gonna
at
say
them.
I don't know about like the equitability of that. Like I understand like the frustration, but I do feel like just the pods like splitting the tournament in half might be
Yeah.
better, which is what they used to do. And because I wanted to get some trivia here. So the last time they did it was NAIC 2022. They split
Gold
us into
pod.
2 pods. What, Kyle?
Let's go gold pod.
Oh,
It
dude,
was
with the whatever
gold
pod I
pod
was in
and
was
blue pod,
stacked.
right?
Yep.
So that like if one pod has like a 10-minute judge call, at least half the players can keep playing. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if the judges technically still have the option available. Does anyone have a guess for how big that NAIC was that had to be split in half?
I think it was only like gonna be like it was COVID year, so probably like 1,300,
I was
1,500.
gonna
It
say
was yeah. It was like
1200. I
it was
don't
like
know.
1200
Yeah,
or
it was
something, or 1150.
1155, and
Yeah.
we felt the need to split it in half. And now we're having 2,000
Yeah.
player regionals.
Hey, we didn't have Chris Szymanski back then, okay?
The goat.
That guy is a legend. I don't know if we'd be where we're at if it weren't for him.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing that I think is an issue too. Like, Pokemon never innovates themselves. Like, Arcanine, for example, that was literally like a Pokédad made that, right? Like,
Yep.
if he didn't, like, if he didn't do that, like, I actually think we might have not had online pairings for like another like 5 years or something, right?
I remember
Like, it just
lining
feels-
up at nationals to see where you're
Yeah.
at.
Imagine being on stream and tracking down the deck list. Not
Yes.
a deck list online that we can print. It was you had to find it in the damn pile.
Yeah, they did.
Mm.
Yeah, when did we move to online deck? Because we had Arcanine for a bit before we did online deck lists. I remember, like, you used to literally in the morning, like, you would show up to the tournament and like there'd be a line of like 500 people, and you were just like, all right, here's my paper deck list that I wrote. Like
Yeah,
when they deck check, it would go
I think
through.
at least the first two ICs we did like without deck lists, or we got the deck lists so late in the tournament because we needed to thin down the group of people playing.
Yeah.
It's like it was tough.
Yeah, I think that like I've played a little bit of another card game that initials are OP, and with playing that there's like an app for the organizer that starts with a B and ends with Andai. And so like their app lets you put in who won the game, whether you lost, however many like it shows you your table number, and it's like we're really efficient. Like you get to see the event locators on there. You see your matches, you see your tournaments, you can build your decks on there, put it on there. Like it's really efficient. And if Pokemon could just copy and paste that, that would be really good because I'm tired of like, okay, let's turn in the match slip or waiting for someone. Like penalize the people that don't turn it in. It's okay. Like they'll learn from it eventually. And like if it's a new player, like you show some lenience with that. But like if it's people who have been there before, like you can look. It's just like it's so efficient once you get it down. So like you could start it at like League Cups and challenges and like beta it, see how it goes. Even doing it at like some Australian cups if they want to always start stuff in Australia, like Pokemon Pocket. But they do it in a select location, and then they try it out and see like, okay, these locals in Seattle by the HQ are starting it, and wow, what do you know? The app is a hit. Like we're gonna go ahead and roll it out to League Cups in the West Coast and more
Let's take
places,
that
and like
same mindset and apply it to the tournament structure instead of something that maybe saves 15 minutes a day. Like
it'll save
I
so much.
appreciate the fact that we could save time there, but also like we really want them to just beta stuff and give us opportunities to see if this sucks or not. And you don't have to do it with even like the like point structure or anything. Just do it with cash, do it with prizes. Like most players are just looking for something fun and different to do. Just give us an opportunity to go do that at a Midwest event. It'll be cheap as hell to fly there or drive there, and we'll all just give it a shot because we want to try something different.
Yeah.
Like they can start anything at League Cups. Like they imagine that they're gonna do like the new structure for asymmetrical cut at regionals and worlds, but like they can start random things like the prize checking thing that we mentioned. Like they can start that at locals
Yep.
and say, they're giving us the option to have a top cut at league challenges. That's not the issue that we're having. We're not having like, oh man, I really want to play out top 4 at my league challenge. No, it's not that. I want to be able to finish my league challenge in 3 hours maybe. So I really do think that like Big Pikachu and all of his disciples, that like they can all think about changing some of the structures at league challenges and cups, or giving the TO the option at least to where we can really see what we do like and don't like.
So,
Yeah.
Mo, to be honest, it kind of just sounds like you want them to start using play limitless to run events.
That would, I don't know if that might be too easy, right? Like it's what I think like the TO's discretion, right? Because I know that like Cyrus Davis in Ontario or Toronto in Canada, basically through some local events, they were running it through Play Limitless, um, and they were just doing local events that way. But like, it's the TO's discretion at the end of the day whether they're supposed to run it through Tom, but some of them, I've seen some wonky things. But I do think that like if more things are being rolled out at the local level, then you can see it at the regional level and see the effectiveness there. Because it's all about stepping stones, and there's not a person who goes to a regional before they go to a challenge. They always go to locals first and then go to a regional because they hear about the regionals at locals. And if they're so used to it at a local level, saying like, you know what, checking my prize cards wasn't that hard because we just flipped it over, and that's what Hisuian Heavy Ball is, anyways. Like, Pokemon shows that they can print cards that do these effects, so they should just do it for everyone. And like, like it starts at the local level. Everything does.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too is I'm like, I don't know what they're scared of, right? Like, let's say they try something new and we all hate it, right? And we're like, okay, this sucked. I mean, we already say that about what they're doing right now, right? So like, if they're
Yes.
willing to try stuff, it's just like, okay, this really flopped this tournament. We're not doing it the next one. Like,
We can't
literally, just
afford
like,
the bad publicity, man. Except for the fact that all of it already is.
yeah, that's what I don't get. So I don't know. Like, I just feel like the other thing I guess is the problem is like they're not really incentivized to do any of this stuff, right? Like all we do, like the history of like Pokemon's like all we do is complain about like how this could be better, this could be better. Like the attendance is still like record breaking every year, right? Like people just love Pokemon so much. We all love it so much. Like we'll play no matter what. So I guess Pokemon, like maybe if attendance started dropping, then maybe Pokemon would be like, oh, like let's start like actually trying a little bit more now. But I think that's another issue, right? It's just like shown that like they can treat their player base, I guess, poorly or just like not put as much effort and like nothing really happens, right?
That's
So,
a good question. I did kind of want to ask, like, do we think there is like a breaking point? Like, how many like Louisville like weird situations with like the X2s might happen? Like we saw Azul basically said like, if this is the system where X2s might not make top 8, I go to tournaments to win. I'm not going to events for now. Please put in some support tickets.
I
This is
mean,
more game design oriented, but like Jay Gearhart is like taking a hiatus from the game. Like, is there a point where like enough prominent players are like, this sucks, I'm really pissed at this, or as long as attendance is up, we're chilling, you think?
I think Azul's tweet, I'm not trying to throw shade. I thought that was a bit ridiculous. Like, come on, Azul, man. Like, you're a competitor. Like, you're still gonna go to tournaments if you want to win, right? Like, it's like also the thing with like the top cut issue is like that affects like 1% of the player base. Most people there just want to play Pokemon. They want to make day two. Like the asymmetric cut thing doesn't affect them that much. So I think sometimes like the issues of the community, like the opinions of like the top players, like just get heard more just because like we have the biggest following and like we talk the most, right? Um, so I think the breaking point would more so be if like the casual player just isn't enjoying the experience anymore, right? Like I think the casual player, like they care about making day two, right? For example, like more so, or like they care about playing more Pokemon. So like if that becomes too difficult, or like now like this 8 round thing, they're like, oh, I'm paying the same amount of money or more money, I'm not playing as much Pokemon. That could be a breaking point, maybe. Like to me, that's where the game will like break is if like the casual players just starts getting like disinterested in it. So
2 points to that. Azul, if he wants to say everyone send in your support tickets, I'm not going to regionals. He still makes a crap ton restreaming the regional and commentating over it and having
yes,
everybody in his chat subbing and all that stuff. Jake Gearhart, he gets nothing from this. He's gonna go home and cry on the couch. This isn't fun for him. So I take Jake's a little more seriously than Azul's, but also Pokemon doesn't care about 1 or 2 people. They care about the masses. And when the second piece of this is the tournament organizers put in an amount of people that they estimate to be at an event before they buy out the space and they do all those things. They have a projected number that they're expecting to hit. And if they're missing that number, that's when things start to get serious. I think if they're having that problem, then it'll make a lot more of a difference than the support tickets.
yeah, it's just like an economics thing at the end of the day, right? Like,
Yeah.
I
unfortunately.
I think that it'll be a long time before like the players really show their, pay with or show with their like their wallets, as they say, like, talk with your wallet instead of, just saying it online and yapping. Um, but at the same time, like, people are gonna show up. You get $10,000 if you win. You get a trip to Worlds, like a free invite to Worlds. There's just so much of like this is the lottery if I win and I'm the average player. Like even if you top eight, like you get 3 grand for top eighting. That's like 7,000 Canadian. Like it's just so much money. Um, that like I think the average player is not going to say no to going to a regional if it's 2 hours away. Like Peoria is notorious for being so low on tier lists that it has its own tiers, but like it's 2 hours from me. I'm not going to not go to Peoria just because I don't like how the tournament structure is. I'm going to still go because if I win the event, I get $10,000. Like it makes too much sense to go to events that are close to you. Now, am I going to fly to Perth to go to a regional? No. But if the tournament structure was amazing and I had the funds and I liked the deck I was playing and I thought the format was great, all that, yeah, sure. Am I going to go to Fresno? Probably not. But if the format was good, sure. There's like you pick and choose because you're also going to see people. You're also going because it's a giant convention. Um, like the other day, one of my students, their parents were like, "Oh, let me know about the Milwaukee one that's close by," because I'll be down to take my kids there. It's a convention at the end of the day. It just so happens there's a tournament there too. So like people are gonna enter the tournament. You get a play mat. Like there's even though we rag on Pokemon too much, there's too much that you're getting out of it for you to like say that like you don't want to go anymore to these events. Like if 100 players say they're not going to go anymore, the tournament's going to fill up anyways and cap out. It just so happens they're not in the tournament. Like it sucks to see Azul not go. It sucks to see Jake Earhart not go. They're brilliant minds, but like tournament's still going to run without them, whether they join it or not.
Yeah, people just love Pokemon, right? Like we all love Pokemon. Like you said, like there's things outside of like the tournament structure, like seeing your friends, like just getting to play the game, like people from all over is like fun. Like Kyle and Fall, like we used to play, right? And like you would win a regionals. They're like, all right, here's a map that says champion and 3 booster boxes. There was zero money, right?
Yep.
Like just playing for the love of the games. Like even if they took away the prize money, like I still think the tournaments would be like really big. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I think all of us just mutually understand that we're gonna keep playing, but
yeah.
we're just a little frustrated that these really easy changes or like just opportunities to try something aren't even being like thought of at all. When they, if anything, it would just boost everybody's morale at the event.
Yeah,
It also feels, I'll just say, like TPCI, just they feel a bit defensive to me. Like I don't know, like I was reading that PokeGym thread and they had like I think it was Dave Schwimmer responded. Like he was just like very aggressively defending like their data. He's like, oh, we heard like that people actually like it. They had I think his name's Chris Brown posted on Twitter, and like people were like giving him suggestions. Like I'm glad he's posting. He's like I'm listening to feedback, but it just felt like a little combative, like a little aggressive, like just feel like digging their heels in a little bit. Like they still think like what they're doing is like correct, and it's like
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like there's a disconnect. So it just feels like an overwhelming majority of us are saying like, "Hey, like we appreciate you like talking to us. Like this is our feedback." It just feels like we're like talking to a wall. Like that's the like I think that's the frustrating thing for the players, right? So like I don't know, like just like more open communication from TPCI, like just feeling like they actually are listening. Just like I think go a long way, right?
so
Like
I'm wondering like how much of this is like kind of the balance between like this being a tournament structure issue versus like a game design metagame issue, because like we're talking about when Kieran, you were kind of saying like at the end of the day this affects like a dozen players who went like X2, right? Like honestly, I feel less bad for the players who got ninth and more bad for the players who bubbled out of top 16. Like that's the more concerning thing for me. But like Kyle, how you're also saying like Jake, your Hearts thing seems a little bit more like you take it a bit more seriously than Azul's. Like I kind of see that in a way of like Jake's not playing because the game is not enjoyable, and like I can relate to that, and I can like feel bad for Jake about that because like it sucks to not enjoy like something you love. And Azul's is more like it's harder to win an event, which is like a very like elite player like level issue. Like, do we? I feel like the stuff that really like angers the community, like kind of like the median player, is more like the game is not fun. Like, how much are we here just like yapping about like a competitive player issue, um, while the real thing that'll kind of like cause change is like if the game gets like not fun to play anymore.
I mean, they got people that make a lot more money than any of us that are making the decisions in game design who are going to fix this. So if you're upset about Dustnor, upset about whatever else is going on. Like it's Briar's not that bad. We'll figure it out. We'll be fine. The issue is we have outdated rules in our game that need to be adjusted. How have we not tackled the opening hand since 1998? It's the exact same thing of this is how you deal with a mulligan when the worst thing your opponent could do to you back then was hit you for 20 with a stupid Hitmonchan, bro. Like you had 8 more turns to draw out of that garbage hand. You were fine. In this day and age, you lose if that hand is Hoot Hoot Pass. It's over. So let's look at those kind of situations as opposed to like there's like card design issues right now, because I don't think those are nearly as bad as people are making it out to be.
Yeah, I agree with Kyle on that. Like if you look at like the top cut of like tournaments, like even in bad formats, like it's still almost always like recognizable people are good players, right? Like no matter how bad a format is on paper, like the best players are still rising to the top. Like even if the game is less enjoyable, and I agree, the format right now is probably less enjoyable than it was a year ago, for example, right? I still think though in general, like the best players are gonna like win out. I get
Easy
like
for you
some
to say,
cards.
buddy. Easy for you to say with your 2 top 8 back to
Yeah, let me
back.
get $1.
Well, I mean, I think it's true though, right?
It
Like
is, it
even
is,
like
it
I
is.
went like if you look at like even the ADP format where we had it briefly before COVID, like I actually stopped playing back then, but I looked on Limitless. I'm like, oh, I still recognize all the people who are making top cut more or less, right? So I was like, I still think like the game is there's still like so much skill involved in the game, even when like we are in a like quote unquote like less skill based format or like there's annoying stuff like Dustnor. But I do think like the how the game feels is a big part of like people playing it or not. Like it sucks to go second and your opponent's like, all right, Dustnor, like Greninja, 2 things, right? That does feel bad. So I guess maybe like the unenjoyable experience for players like is maybe there, but I don't know. I think the game is still fun, like even at its worst. Like the core like of the game is still good. So I think people will still.
Yeah, I definitely do think that like the games, even if it's like not necessarily someone's definition of fun, I think that the format's incredibly unique with the terrestrialize mechanic as well. Well, I think the terrestrialize abilities were just like they punted them. They should have unique abilities, but the fact that like you have Noctowl with like the terrestrialize or the Skyfield or the underground terrestrialize under depths, whatever it's called, that card, you just have like all these cool mechanics in the format. So like you can build your deck and like, go to your locals and they'll do like wacky Wednesday locals or whatever, and then have like everyone bring a deck that doesn't have Dusknoir in it. Okay, we're gonna do that. Like I've done that at my locals where like we did jank, where the highest rarity you could play is a rare. Um, and we just had fun days, and it had to have a theme. Like you have to be able to explain it and present it. Like I played Reggie's in like Cosmic Eclipse form, or not Cosmic Eclipse, Crimson Invasion format. Like if you're not enjoying the game playing at a hyper competitive level, take a step back, play a different format, and then look at the format and say, wow, what do I actually enjoy playing? If you're not enjoying playing Terapagos, don't play Terapagos. Play Raging Bolt, play Regidrago V-Star. There's 45 different decks that are meta, and you can play something you enjoy because I promise you there's something. As well as like the format's not as unenjoyable as like to me the format's pretty enjoyable. There's some things I don't like necessarily, like the fact that some decks are just dead in certain matchups. Like if you go up against a Kyurem, a Regidrago, and you're playing Gardevoir, like you're probably not winning that. But it's not as bad as like ADP Hammers, where that was literally the most unenjoyable format I've ever played. Um, but like this format's not that bad, and people want to make it like, oh, Dusknoir's terrible, it's oppressive. Like if your opponent hits the stones turn 2 and like double candy Dusknoir, yeah, it sucks, but like okay, go to the next round. Like you're not gonna win every tournament you enter, and if you do, like stop whining because you're already winning. Like
You'll lose
just,
any
just
format.
find a reason to enjoy the game.
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
it's not as bad. Like probably the point where I wanted to like stop playing cards was like ADP Zacian with hammers and like all that stuff, and I would literally play it because the world was in lockdown and I had nothing better to do because I couldn't go to my job. But now it's like there's so many cool cards and so many cool decks. Like if you cannot copy pasta a deck and enjoy it, then innovate a deck and play it, because like if you're gonna put in the hours to play the game, you might as well put in hours to innovate a deck instead of like complaining about like, oh, I can't play this deck, then play something else. Like I promise you it's not that bad. Like top players are still topping. Caleb won with Raging Bolt, and you would never in a million years would have thought he would have played it. Well, it's a good call. It's a good deck. Like I don't know. I hate the complaining. I also do my fair bit of yapping.
I think, but everyone's yapping just comes from like a good place. I feel like, even if sometimes it comes off a bit aggressive, and like Gearhart did. It's like, okay, like if you're not enjoying the game, like take a step back, stop playing. Like that's just like I think the right approach, right? Uh, like I literally like when I took my like longest break, it was literally when the tag teams were there. I'm like, this game is like I just did not like the game anymore. I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna play anymore. And then COVID happened anyways, but I'm like, all right, like
When you've been playing as long as we have, it's like we've had such good formats that
yes,
we immediately recognize when something's getting bad, and it just stinks when it keeps getting a little worse and worse. Like it's still better than some of the worst formats we've ever seen, but that's not the standard that I hold myself to,
yes,
because I can
exactly.
always go revisit 2006 and have the time of my life. So it's tough for me, but that's also why casting was like such a blessing too, because I'm like I can still enjoy the game without going through all the trials and tribulation of all this BS that happens to you in a tournament, and I'd be like, oh man, sucks for you, but I feel great.
Well, I think also
Yeah.
though, like the tournament structure kind of like goes hand in hand with game design, right? Like back in like 2006, for example, like it was best of 140 minutes because like the games would take so long, right?
Yep.
So like you can't design the game like that anymore if you're gonna do best of 350 minutes. So I think the designers even said like they tried to speed up the game because they want to have the time limits are lower. So I actually really do think the game itself, like the design, I think it's like took a huge hit and like a lot of constraints because of like the tournament structure that we operate under. So I just think as long as we have it like that, like I don't think we can ever go back to like a slower format like the old ones that a lot of people
Yeah,
enjoy.
I mean we just can't, and we're also, if you think about the markets we're competing with, it's all of these games that you can play on your phone that are over in 6 minutes, and it's like
Yes.
that's what Pokemon Pocket is gonna be, just this short, quick game. I'm like, man, I like legit. I just want to just play chess with the boys in Pokemon. Like that's what it was for me back then. You get to outsmart people, have fun with it, and see my favorite characters and go for it. And that we don't have that anymore, but I'm also not gonna like completely say like there's no skill in what we're doing right now, because clearly the same people that were doing well in those old formats can do it right now. It's just if you ask them, they'd rather have more time, play a 14 turn game instead of these 3 turn games that take the same amount of time.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask like how much of that then factors into like the preference for maybe best of three over best of one in certain events where like, I if something like Raging Bolt is in the meta, I would kind of rather have best of three, you know? But if I'm playing 2006, like I don't need best of three 70 minutes. Like I'll play my one game, like the best player will usually win. Like at NAIC, I played Miraidon. I knew there's gonna be a lot of Lugia. Only hit one, but like the one I hit, I won in 10 minutes, and I was like, cool. And now I just get to like hang out. Like I'm assuming that wasn't really happening a whole lot in like 2006, 2007. Like you just hit a matchup, you win in 5 minutes because it's just so free. You're playing games.
Yeah, it took time to win no matter what you were playing. No matchup was like truly auto loss. It took time. It took until we saw like what the overzealous Sableye that was attacking for like 50 on the first turn, where they had to like start adjusting the rules, because that would actually end games on turn 0. Like your opponent would not have a turn, and we're like, oh crap! Like you have to sit here for 40 minutes. Do you want to go get lunch? Like I feel bad. Like that was tough, and that's when we needed to revisit either the structure of the tournament or how we're going to go about the initial game design. And then they decided like, okay, no attacking first turn, let's slow this thing down a little bit. But then we had to speed it up because of power creep, and then it's just turned into this where the games literally last 3 turns. And like,
Yeah.
I don't love that. In a vacuum, it is explosive and exciting at times, but sometimes it sucks and you get a bad hand and it's over.
Yeah, I think I've always put my like Jake Gearhart cap on. The thing I said, the biggest thing I hate that they did with modern Pokemon is it's way too easy to take a one shot in Pokemon. Like it feels like every deck can just one shot something. Like back in the day, there was maybe like a couple decks that could do that, and they had to really build towards doing that. And like they couldn't do it like every turn easily. So yeah, it's just like how modern Pokemon is, like Kyle's saying. It's a back and forth that's exciting. Like there's a knockout almost every turn. But I yearn for the days where it's like, all right, like I hit your like two prizer for like 150. Like you can maybe max potion or like penny or even Acerola. But
Yeah,
yeah,
you ever heard of a deck called Spread Anything? Like
yes, exactly.
all spread variants are dead in this format because you don't have enough
Yeah.
turns to make that happen. Like if you want to call Dragapult spread, you're a jerk. Like that's not you're barely getting to the to what that used to be.
You're spreading
You're
130 with
softening things up.
Dusknor. It's not right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Frostlass is like not even a deck right now, which like if Frostlass Monkey Dory was like a viable deck, then that would be really cool for the format because like then you would have like your wow, I really have to think this out, but it's not control, but it's like playing down my abilities and
Oh,
resources, like the old like Tapu Koko spread deck. The I think it
Yeah,
was
it's my
called like
favorite of all time. Yeah.
college. It was called like college debt or something or checks and balances. I forgot what it was called, but basically it was just like you do 20 damage a turn, and then there's Shrine of Punishment, which does it was like 10 damage to rule boxes between turns. And like we need a stadium like that. We need things that like elongate the match. Um, like if we got like a life due reprint for I don't know, like it's a very make it really, really specific because we have
everything you're saying is
45 A
gate kept
specs.
by Iron Hands, man.
Yeah, it's just too
Okay,
slow, I think. Like you
like
could be trying to do 30, yeah.
eventually.
Yeah.
Like
Like
I think
yeah,
the format's not where you want it to be, but if you're there's things you can do to enjoy the format. There's some cards that definitely are a little oppressive. But like, I mean, soon enough, like Iron Hands is, it's still gonna be around, but like some of the cards might rotate, or like the engine might not be as fast. Like when we lose double turbo, get the turn one Iron Hands. I dare you. Like I don't think you're gonna really do that, but like I think that as time goes on, they're gonna put out more cards that allow you to play more games, and hopefully even if it's two more turns per game, that's two more turns you're getting to play, rather than the game being over because they got the turn one kill on my Lugia and I only had one Lugia down.
Mo, you're on the optimistic side of the game
I
designers are
just
going to save this for us. But like I think it's our
it's up and down.
responsibility to point out what the tournament designers could do for us, which is they could look at either adjusting this, or we could bring this all the way up to Daddy Pikachu and say, hey, like adjust a rule set in here. I get what the designers are going to do what they're going to do. They need to sell cards. They also need to keep the game semi-competitive. So they're going to do those things, but we just need to make sure the tournament's enjoyable.
It's the price checking. Adjust that
It
at
does
League Cup
suck. I
level,
agree.
League Challenge level, and I mean you're shaving time off. Like I you know, maybe it's somewhere in the rule book. They can adjust it where like during a league challenger, league cup, even unsanctioned locals, that like you can start implementing these. You check the prizes and just see how the results speak for themselves. Like that's one rule where I don't think there's anyone that's against it.
I think both players should wear a clock around their neck, and after 15 seconds, it zaps the shit out of them. If they,
Flavor Flav style.
yes, just also the amount of players that are like missing that they need to like concede games and stuff too.
yeah.
There's so many things that are happening that it's just like I like that you want to play Pokemon and like you respect the game enough to like try to give it its fair shake, but you also have to understand you're in a tournament and you got to go. Like
Yeah.
there's levels to this, and you have to play this the right way still.
Yeah, like Kyle, were you the one casting my stream game in Louisville? Like I just remember like we had
Yeah,
like 5 minutes to play game 3, and like I can't tell my opponent during game 2. I'm like, bro, please scoop the game, like so we have
yeah.
time. Like
You
I
were playing
remember,
like a
yeah.
dad or something, right? Or
Sorry.
something. I'm like dude, it was painstakingly slow to see how this was going.
Yeah. So I think one thing we haven't discussed yet that I think is interesting is like, what would you guys think of like trying best of two? So like I was discussing with like a Lorcana, they're a Pokemon professor. They do Lorcana, and Lorcana does best of two. You get like an extra match point if you 2-0 your opponent, but like you also get like one match point if you win like one game in a best of two or something. I thought that was interesting because I think in Pokemon, like one of the problems with best of one or even best of three is like one player gets to go first, like
Yes.
2 times or 1 time. And I haven't played other card games, but like Pokemon, like going first is like so massive and like so many matchups. So I thought best of two might be an interesting thing to try because like you could realistically maybe even do like 40 minutes best of two, even though I'd prefer if we still did like 50 or whatever. Like maybe add more rounds that way. And then you could have like a more loose like point cutoff to make it to day two. Ties are almost like done. So I don't know. I thought that might be an interesting format for us to try. Again, like if we don't like it, we don't like it. But like, why don't we just like try this at like one of the tournaments or something?
Yeah. I don't hate it. I feel like we're gonna end up in a lot of the spots where both players steal a game off each other, and then it's like, well, did you win the matchup roulette where you can beat a person even if they're going first because the matchup was so favorable? That could be a problem, which I think we're like slightly better off by just having more unique games. But that's a nightmare for a tournament organizer to run and try to get us through like 12 matches in one day. Like they're not signing up for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with doing best of one is like, so from what I understand from talking to judges and like readings, like no matter like if it's best of 3, 2, 1, like there's still like a turnaround time between each round for
Yeah.
like match slips, all that. So if you do a bunch of best of one rounds, like you're not saving that much time, even though it seems like we can. But I think one problem with best of three is like we're saying like it's hard to play 3 games. Like it already feels like you almost have to 2-0 your opponent a lot of the times. Like when I look at my regional
I
runs,
always do. I concede game 2
yeah,
every time.
yeah, right.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, so it's like I don't know. That's why I'm like kind of okay with trying best of two. Like if I look at any of my good runs, like I almost 2-0 most of my opponents, like in the runs, right? So it's like I don't know. I feel like it might be better than just playing best of three. Just being like, all right, like maybe you just have to 2-0 like maybe 3 or 4 of your rounds if you want to make day two.
I would actually try in game 2 if we only had
Yeah.
2 games. So that's
Yeah.
that's a positive. I like that.
So
Yeah, you get
to
rid of
me,
scooping pretty much. Yeah.
it's kind of feeling less like then the issue is like there is issues of like best of three and there's like also downsides of best of one as you were saying, Kieran, especially with like bigger events now. But it seems more like the issue is like the use of time within the round. Does it kind of feel like that might be like the one of the bigger issues? Like we were saying, like certain players enjoy taking their time on their first deck search. Like there's kind of it's kind of like even though it's not really official, like it's kind of unspoken, like, oh well, your first deck search, you get to kind of look through all your stuff, which like people really can abuse that. Kyle, you're talking about like changing mulligan rules. Mo, you're saying like look at your prizes. Like, does that seem like one of the main ways that like kind of whatever the format is, like as long as we could just get more games done, and not have the first 10 minutes be 2 turns, does that feel like kind of the most like universal, simple solution?
I think if they kept this current structure of we play 8 rounds, but we give the players 60 minutes and adjust you can look at your prizes and we adjust some form of mulligan potentially. You don't even have to do that one because that's probably the worst one to actually adjust. But even just to get rid of the mulligans and give the players that time, we'd probably see the tie rate drop drastically, and it wouldn't be the scummy way where you have to just trust somebody that you've never met.
Or pressure someone, yeah, like, well, I had the game and it's like that, you have
We
to
all know
pressure
it's
someone to
someone.
scoop the game. It's not me.
It's you.
I'll call a judge on myself. I'd like to think I'm a good opponent.
I've been manipulating my opponent.
I told them that if they don't scoop this buddy poffin that I palmed in a different color sleeve, I don't get to use it.
Yeah.
But I really do think that like you take away these little things, and then it builds up to have such a big impact over a tournament. The prize one, and like Kyle said, like adding the 10 minutes, like you're adding 10 minutes, but then you're taking away prize checking. Okay, well that's like 15 minutes over the course of a set. So like,
Honestly,
I'd rather be able to play more Pokemon than to sit there and watch my opponent prize check. Like that's one reason why I like hate versing people that prize check is just because like I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs like, okay, let me know when it's my turn. I'm gonna go on my phone. Meanwhile, I can't do that in a regional. I can do that at locals, but like there's so many things that they can take away. But I do think that like adding the 10 extra minutes to play the game and then taking away the thing that wastes the most amount of time during the game would just it would solve so many things. Like I don't care if you take a picture of them on your phone and pull up the picture on your phone and say, well, I took this prize card, scratch it out. At the point, I just want to play cards. I'm not entering a tournament to watch someone, organize their deck and then shuffle it, and it's not even fully shuffled. Like, it's
I
that's
can
such a
only
small
talk
thing.
about the initial setup of Charizard so much as the guy organizes his
Yeah.
entire deck. It's so boring for everybody who's a part of it.
It's a bad
Did
viewing
you?
experience too, right? Like if
Yeah.
if I'm just tuning into the stream, like why are they? Like, it also looks sketch when people are just putting their
Yeah.
cards in the front. If you've never played, like obviously we know it's like fine now, but like it just looks like someone's stacking their deck like right at the start of the game.
Yeah, when they do 3 overhands and they're like presenting their deck, and it's like, no, shuffle it more. Like, what are you doing? Because at the table, you think that all
I
these
gotta
players
save
are
time. I
shuffling that
just
well?
wasted 6 minutes.
Oh, my bad, bro. I got you. Here, overhand a couple times. I'll hit a couple of these, overhand. Just like, no. Just look at your prize cards. I'm just it's crazy to me that like people that's not a rule yet, but hopefully they even put it as like if they put the you can run top cut at challenges, they should be able to put you can run it at challenges and cups where people can flip their prizes over. But it has to be announced right away. It cannot be like Azul mentioned, like it would be your choice at the start of the round to tell your opponent, because that's where it gets scummy. where you tell your opponent, no, I don't want you checking your prize cards, because then like there's so many more judge calls. You have to make it unanimous. The judge has to announce it at the start of the tournament and every round, for the first couple tournaments, and get it in there, because like it makes it easier on everyone, new players, juniors, seniors, older players. Like, I know that Kieran can prize check in about 2 minutes.
I don't know. I
Can
don't
I
know how
prize
you
check?
can. I don't know how you can do that though, because like, what if some guy genuinely is like gets a miscount on his deck and he like goes through a second fan? Like, is that the rule? Like, if he fans it the second time, that you just throw the ban hammer at him, or he gets a DPL? Like,
You
how
get
do
one
you?
time.
No, there's no
Like,
there's no way
like
that you can enforce this rule. Like, I think
I've
the only thing you can do is just say, just flip your damn prizes at the beginning of the game. Let's see what happens.
I think the problem is like I don't even know if like TPCI is allowed to do that. Like, is that a core game rule that Japan has to make the decision we can do that, or is TPCI just allowed to say like, hey, we can do it in North America, but like I guess in Japan they just don't do it. Like, are we allowed? Are we even sure that this can happen?
These are
I
great
hope it can.
questions. These are great questions. I have no
do it
idea.
and find out.
We might have to do a little
Yeah.
follow up.
LAIC is the first tournament to do it. Just have the player cam, and they're gonna look and be like, "Whoop! I prized boss's order. Oh no!" Like, just have them look at their prizes and figure it out from there. But I think like the way to go about it is gonna be the same as like during the COVID era when there was no sanctioned events. Run it at a non-sanctioned local. See how players like it. Get the feedback, and they can do it closer to the base, and do it in Seattle or like in places with a lot of like big judge names. I mean, we're blessed to be in the Chicagoland area, Rafal, where like we can run it. And then Chris Szymanski's, an hour drive away. I don't know where he lives, but I could send him a message at least and be like, hey, it was pretty cool. Let your boss know. Like, running it at non-sanctioned events as like a guinea pig, where the Pokemon Company does not even know it's happening, but you can let them know your data and say like, on average, we saved 25 minutes per every 4 rounds at a 6-person local 1K whatever. We saved an hour, like something
But
absurd, but whatever it is, like you let them know your data, and then like maybe they consider it.
they don't. They won't respect the data unless it's at like a scale that they're used to. And the only time that we've ever really done that was the Klaczynski Open.
I was literally just thinking that.
And do you know how much money Jason lost on the Klaczynski Open? It was a nightmare for him to organize that event. He lost so much money just trying to like run a tournament his way and see if it was the better way. And I mean, the viewing experience was kind of tough too. Like, he streamed it, and Jesus, the finals match lasted like 3.5 hours because he like
Yeah,
reset the bracket, and it was best of 5 or 7 or some. It was
it's best
it
of
took
five.
for
Yeah,
yeah, it took forever, and
with
like
Ross
and
Cawthon in the
it was
finals.
Ross. Yeah, it was Ross versus Lex, and they're
Oh
both taking
no.
so much time. So like, he didn't really get to prove his point, and he lost a crap ton of money. And it was just like, okay, nobody ever wants to do that again. It has to be Pokemon that takes the first step, and I mean, we just have to talk loud enough to hopefully get them to make any attempt at it.
So guys, I have to start cutting us off because my dog's going a little crazy.
You're good.
Do you guys mind just kind of we got a lot to talk about, a lot to ponder, and maybe we could do a little follow up after a couple events. But do you guys mind just kind of giving a little outros, kind of your final thoughts, and we'll kind of be done for the evening.
Sounds good.
Kieran?
I will start
Oh, Mo, yeah.
because why not? So follow me on Twitter because it's not X. Follow me at PTCGMO, not PTCGO. And shout out to my team, Nerd Rage Gaming. Best in the Chicagoland area. Play some Pokemon there, player cups, and I don't know, catch me whatever tournament I'm at. Say hi to me, or I'll say hi to you or something.
Sweet. I'll go next, I guess. Yeah, good discussion, guys. Enjoyed it. I think at the end of the day, our takeaway is just like everyone wants Pokemon to be better. I think we all like talk about it so much because we love the game so much. But if you want to follow me, I'm like at Kieran_TCG on pretty much every social. Go listen to my podcast, the Shift Gear podcast, and I'll just shout out Toronto like always. Not best city and best Pokemon city.
Second best, yeah. Woo.
Yeah, Chicago. Okay, come on,
We
bro.
got Michael Davidson,
True.
Yeah,
All right,
chill.
no comment.
the goat, the goat.
Yeah, I mean, catch me on the stream. It's Kyle Stablehouse. I'll be at every event that they allow me to be at. So if you see me there, say hi. I mean, this is fun because honestly, it's just a bunch of people that just want to see the Pokemon in a better place. So I feel like we're gonna get to that at some point. It just depends on if they're gonna listen to us. And in the past, they've shown that they are willing to do some things, and hopefully, it just gets to that point. And I think we're getting closer and closer. It might not be the way that we wanted to get there, but ultimately, if the game changes for the better, I'm gonna be happy. So
Yeah.
let's hope for the best, boys.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
bring
guys,
more people in.
yeah, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. And you can follow me at Memcap Podcast or at RZ Gladys. I'll have all our socials at the top of our little pictures. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'll definitely try to do something like this in the future. Thank you guys.